Let's do this.
It's time for Hanging with Langan.
I like that she's got a big dirty mouth that gets her in trouble.
Wow.
Stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time.
Hey, you guys, welcome to Hanging with Langan. How are you? I am so excited. In just a moment, I am going to introduce to you my guest, the comedy writing great Alan Zweibel. You know, if you're watching this, we're all over the place. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook Live, we're on all the major platforms. So if you're watching this, share, start a watch party, because this really is a treat. I mean, Alan, to spend his time with us today is a big friggin' deal, and you people better appreciate it, and you better say, thank you, Maureen, for bringing Alan to me. You're welcome, but it's really him you have to thank. We'll take comments, we'll take questions. You guys have been really excited about this, so share it, start a watch party, and you know the deal. So here we go. What I'm going to do is give him a really rousing introduction, because he deserves it. I told you he's a comedy writing great. I know him through the Friars Club. This man has been one of the most gracious human beings I've ever met. He could be an egomaniac, but he's not. Down to friggin' earth. Original Saturday Night Live writer from day one. Won an Emmy in like his first year. Won 5 Emmys total. He won Tonys and Critics Awards and Writers Guilds. The New York Times says he has earned a place in the pantheon of American pop culture. Well, I say that. I don't need the New York Times to say that. Curb Your Enthusiasm, a consulting producer. He co-created and produced It's Gary Shandling's show, which of course was killer. A movie coming soon with his buddy Billy Crystal called Here Today. Also, Tiffany Haddish will be in that. And he's joining me today to talk about his book, which I read every word. I took like 8 million notes, like I'm in a graduate writing class. Laugh Lines, My Life, Making Funny People Funnier. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, from this nice Jewish boy who worked in a deli on Long Island to really comedy greatness. But there's hurdles along the way. This isn't just a red carpet laid out to you. You got to do the work. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Maureen Langan's show, Hanging with Langan, Mr. Alan Zweibel.
Hi, Maureen. How you doing?
Oh, man. I was like, I want to talk to you so much before we went on, but I'm like, I got to save it. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, well, you know, you're in demand and you're taking the time to be with us today. So we're really grateful. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, people are already going, I want to joke. I need this. Watching your trajectory, I love that you say that you couldn't get into a law school, so you had no choice but to be a comedy writer. You're on Long Island. You have nice parents. Talk to me about how you got into comedy writing and the very first joke that you sold.
I got into comedy writing because my mom and dad went to Lake Tahoe in the summer of '72. It was the summer I graduated, right after I graduated college. I did get rejected from a gazillion law schools. I went back to live at home with my parents. I knew I wanted to be a comedy writer, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what you were supposed to do. And my mom and dad went to Lake Tahoe. They saw a show that starred Engelbert, excuse me, Humperdinck.
I know, what a name, right?
And the opening act was a Catskill comedian named Morty Gunty. And my mother ran into him in a coffee shop the next morning, said, my son wants to be a writer. He gave her his name and phone number. And I started writing for him. $7 a joke. That was the going rate at the time. I wrote for all those guys up in the Catskills who were still there, because, you know, that was at one point the breeding ground, like for Alan King and Red Buttons and Toady Fields and Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis. You know, they all started there and then moved to L.A. and became, you know, they were big stars. I was writing for the guys that were left behind. You know, the guy, every Freddie, Mickey, Morty, Dickie, and Lee that ever lived.
And I know all of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the first joke I got $7 for was to Morty Gunty. He wanted a joke about sperm banks. I'm 21, like I cared about sperm banks. And I had him say, they have a new thing now called sperm banks, which is just like an ordinary bank, except here, after you make a deposit, you lose interest. Okay, $7. That made me a professional comedy writer. And as a matter of fact, a check from Morty is is in the book, is in Laugh Lines. It was funny because I showed his wife, who I'm still friendly with. She's like in her 80s now. The check, the actual check I kept, it was like momentous because it made me a professional comedy writer. And the check is for $25. And she said, my God, how many jokes did he make you write for $25? So that's what it was like, you know?
Did it build your confidence selling one, or did you still think I got lucky, or, you know, were you just nervous?
Well, it was a little bit of all of that stuff. You know, look, growing up on Long Island, when it came like a Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, Labor Day, there were 4 kids. My parents put us all in the station wagon, and we went up to the Catskills and for a weekend, and I would sneak into the nightclubs where these guys were performing because I was too young. And now these same guys were doing jokes that I was writing for them. So there was a real kick to it. I was a little nervous, but I learned how to write a joke, because these guys, that's all they did was jokes. They were joke tellers. You remember who those guys were. They had no distinct personality. There was no character on stage. Mm-hmm. So if you know, they all wore tuxedos, they had the same cap teeth, you know,
the same dandruff on the shoulders,
the same premature orange hair. And so if one guy didn't like it, the other guy did it because it wasn't specific to a character. It wasn't until years later when I started writing for guys, let's say like Rodney Dangerfield, mm-hmm. who was a character. He said, I don't get no respect. You know, as an infant, my mother wouldn't breastfeed me. She said she liked me as a friend. See, that was a lot easier to write that because I was writing it for a specific voice, you know?
Yeah. I'm always interested when somebody says to me, look, there are people who are so prolific as comics, like Joan Rivers. She needs joke writers, but she has had her voice, God rest her soul. I've always been interested when I see somebody who isn't established, who doesn't need a plethora of all this material, like an actress getting up on stage at Stand Up New York or Caroline's going, yeah, I need a writer because I really want to get into stand-up. I'm like, no, you have to be freaking funny and come up with material. What are you talking about? Am I wrong about this? What's an actor and what's a comedian? There's a line there.
Well, you know, look, there is a line there. A comedian is a funny person who gets on stage and speaks funny about whatever he or she is thinking about, their view of the world. An actor, it's a different discipline. Actors, by and large, work with other people. They make eye contact with another person on stage with them at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's dialogue. So the onus isn't on them standing there naked telling jokes or telling their story. They are within a scene. They are within a play, and they are indeed that, an actor in it. So there is a distinct difference, you know. Each one thinks that the other one, it's a harder road, you know. And I think that being a stand-up comedian is probably a little harder because you're not hiding behind a character. You're out there yourself.
Yeah, I imagine it's what you have a skill for. Just when I see people who've getting on a stage who've never crafted work saying, I want to be a comedian, you know, you're like, what are you talking about? You know, do the work.
That's you and I exactly the same way, Maureen. When, you know, I'll go all over the country and I'll give my speeches and, you know, and if there's a Q&A or people will come up to you afterwards and they go, you know, my nephew wants to be a writer. Oh, okay. Is he writing? No, but he wants to be. Well, if he's not fucking writing, then he's not a writer. You know, I'm from the old school where I think with funny people, you're either funny or you're not. Mm-hmm. You can hone your craft, obviously. You okay? Well, I honed joke writing when I was working for those Catskill guys. So when I got to SNL, I had to learn a whole new discipline because I'd never written for sketches. I always wrote for guys who were standing on stage telling jokes straight out to an audience. Right. Now I have to write, so I could do that for Weekend Update, which were jokes that were told in one to the camera. But if I was to write Samurai Deli, or any of the other things that I wrote for SNL back then, you had people who were within the frame talking to each other. And that's something I hadn't done before. And I knew I wanted to, you know, wanted to write Broadway, wanted to write movies, create my own TV shows, which had scenes and had story. So that was a different discipline altogether.
I want to tell people that I'm speaking with Alan Zweibel. His book is called Laugh Lines, My Life Helping Funny People Be Funnier. You can get it on Amazon, or you can go to his website, Alan Zweibel. I'm telling you guys, you're going to read it in like 5 minutes because it's riveting and you can't stop turning the page about just the magnitude of people you've worked with. Saturday Night Live, I want to play a clip. And I think it's amazing that you went from writing in the Catskills to Saturday Night Live and won an Emmy your first year. It's mind-boggling to me, and it's inspiring. Okay, we're also was in a very innovative time with somebody like Lorne Michaels, who let people go to town and do their thing. But here is a clip of your dear friend and a bit that you helped her work on that was repeated. I have questions about it. Here we go. Gilda.
This past Thursday was the Great American Smokeout, a day that everyone in America was encouraged to stop smoking cigarettes for a 24-hour period. Here to comment further is Update Health correspondent Rosanna Dana.
Richard Fader from Fort Lee, New Jersey writes in and says, Dear Rosanna Dana, last Thursday I quit smoking. Now I'm depressed, I gained weight, my face broke out, I'm nauseous, I'm constipated, my feet swelled, my gums are bleeding, my sinuses are clogged, I got heartburn, I'm cranky, and I have gas. What should I do? Mr. Fader, you sound like a real attractive guy. You belong in New Jersey.
Gilda Radner, your dear friend, godmother to your children, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a character that she and I created together. And Richard Fader from Fort Lee, New Jersey is my brother-in-law. So I would write a letter from him to her whenever we would do the bit. And I made each letter more stupid than the one before. And he really got off on it. He's still my brother-in-law. And, you know, if he gets pulled over for speeding, 45 years later, he's telling the cop who he is, you know. And but that was the beauty of collaboration, you know, to write with Gilda, to write with Aykroyd, anybody who, you know, with Buck Henry, anybody who came through those halls. There's just the synergy of 1 and 1 equaling 3. You know, what Lorne did was when our very first meeting, when he was talking about this new show, he described it as a comedy variety show. But then the next sentence was, he elaborated. He says, what he meant by that was, it's a variety of different kinds of comedy. So you had, among the 10 original writers, you had Michael O'Donoghue, who founded the National Lampoon. You had Ann Beats, who wrote for the National Lampoon. You had me, who was a joke writer up in the Catskills. Franken and Davis were a stand-up comedy team from LA. So, I mean, you had people with different backgrounds and different views of the world. And that's what gave it the variety that Lorne was talking about.
It was interesting for me to read in your book, Laugh Lines, available on Amazon, that somebody like, see, that was product placement. So product placement. So it was interesting for me to read. You always hear these tales, but that there were women on these shows, writers, and Jane and Lorraine and Gilda, but that Belushi did not want to do some of these women sketches, the one about construction, that the women were going to heckle him or something like that. There was a resistance. Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, that was a sketch. And the only reason I remember it is because Rosie Schuster was one of the original writers, and I got a hold of all the writers from my era and other eras, you know, from other productions that I have done, but specifically from SNL. I wanted to make sure that I quoted them properly, and, you know, do you remember it this way? Do you remember it that way? And Rosie had told me, and it's in the book, that I think that was for Lily Tomlin hosted the 6th show. and Rosie wanted to just reverse the role models when it came to construction workers, where you had women construction workers who were ogling a guy who was walking by. And yeah, I had forgotten that John didn't want to do it. I don't remember the politics involved in it, but I remember that Danny Aykroyd did. And it played well, and because of the role reversals. But you know something, different people had different sensibilities, and one of the great things was if you weren't crazy about something, somebody else would do it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wondering today, when I read your book, Laugh Lines, I get the sense that even to this day, Saturday Night Live is a family, and you don't criticize different eras of it or different people of it. And I'm curious, I want to play this. If you think Eddie Murphy today, his Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood would fly today, I actually think it's very timely. Here we go.
It's one hell of a day in my neighborhood. A hell of a day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I hope I get to move in your neighborhood someday. The problem is when I move in, y'all move away. So come on up with some coke and some smoke. You bring the stash, cause Robinson broke. Will you be mine? Won't you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Hello, boys and girls. We're all alone again today. You know why? My wife walked out on me. Isn't that nice? I'm so glad the bitch is gone.
So what would fly today? We're in such politically correct times. I think it's inhibiting.
My friends and I, we speak about it all the time, and we go through our careers and talk about what we did and what we couldn't do today. Okay. So and you know, you get somebody like you know, Mel Brooks. There was this great joke that was going around that if he did Blazing Saddles today and took out all the things that were objectionable by today's standards, the movie would be about 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
Okay? And like I said, we all talk about pieces, even some of the directors that I'm friends with, movies that they've directed that they say, no way I could have done that today. No way. And the fact is, it's a shame. The PC movement and has gone way, way overboard. I think I think it's the death of comedy. It's you know, I remember a time where everybody made fun of each other and then we went for lunch. You know, it's just what you did.
Yeah.
And there's hypersensitivity now that takes away the bite out of parody. And parody, you know, you can go back to the time of Jonathan Swift. You can go back, you know, all through the annals of American humor. And that's what parody was. It made fun. Look at Python. Look at what we did on SNL. You're punching up. Okay, there's an authority, and whether it's the Queen or the President or you know, God, you know, and you're finding humor in it. You're finding fault, and that's what SNL was at the beginning. I watch it now. I watch it every week, and you know, when I think about some of the, I mentioned Samurai Deli earlier. I don't think we could have done that today. Rosanna could not have been done today.
Why?
Why? Because there will be people saying you're making fun of a certain ethnicity.
Jesus.
Okay. Well, think about it. You know, it's horrible. Your hands are really tied. So when I hear that Jerry Seinfeld, or I ran into Chris Rock a number of months ago, and you know, we're talking about this with Chris in particular about not playing colleges because they give you a list of things that you're not supposed, subjects you're not supposed to go near. So you know, comedy is done with love, comedy, there's a wink there. And there's something fun about sitting next to somebody and laughing at the same thing. But the irony of it is the whole PC thing is it's more divisive than anything. You're saying there's a difference between you and me, and there are lines that can't be crossed, as opposed to us all sharing in each other's foibles, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds. Do you think that Don Rickles would last a half a minute today?
No, I know. And then, being Irish is called taking the piss out of each other. It's wit, and you one up, and, you go after each other and one up, and it just,
yeah.
It's a little,
now you got these referees, these arbiters who are going, no, we have 5 grandchildren, and one of the grandchildren a couple of years ago came home. He didn't get in trouble, but his friend did. Because the friend said to still another friend, "You gypped me out of a dime."
Right.
And I couldn't figure out what the problem was. And then it was explained to me, well, gypped, I didn't know it came from gypsies.
Yeah.
Oh, so now, well, I'm sorry, I'll say it here on your show. That's what they're known to do. Okay, that's how it happened. Okay, and so at an early age, I think he was in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, yeah, I understand that there's a line. I get that totally, and I do think that there are a lot of roads that have to be mended. Okay, and but just a broad sweeping cancel culture, there's a value to having Uncle Tom's Cabin. Yes, they use the N-word in it 1,000 times, but there is a value to this is the way they wrote, and this is the way they wrote back then. So you in the context. Otherwise, Merchant of Venice, Shylock should not be played by a Jew. Okay, that was the stereotype. And you watch these things, and you keep it in a context. Right now, context. And I think comedy used to be more about gut reactions, things that were a little bit more visceral. But now when the mind gets involved, it misses a beat, and we know that that's not good.
Because you can't be in the moment, because you have to. And the thing is, it's you're live. You're right there. If your mind is active, it's ahead of you.
Yeah.
So you have to.
You're catching up to your mind. You're absolutely right.
And I love that, because you're chasing. Your thoughts are like, I got this. And now you're like, oh. A couple things that you said. One is the death of comedy, but language. I think language is so important. It puts us in context. It tells us who we were at a certain time. To erase that pains me greatly. And I did a story. I interviewed a woman who, the Whitney Plantation outside of New Orleans, which was it was an incredible museum that pays homage to what slavery went through, what slaves. There was a letter from a boy. And you don't know till you're done reading it that he was 10, and it's powerful, and it's written in a child's Black English. And the missus, she done with me, all like this. She done call me, and I used the word that he said that she called him, which of course is the N-word. And I said, beginning my broadcast, I said, I'm going to say the exact words this young boy used, because you need to know what a 10-year-old boy went through, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to respect him enough to use the words that young boy used. But you still got to put a disclaimer that I'm going to use the N-word, because that's what that little boy had to be called. And I want people to feel it, just as I want people to feel the humor or the darkness that flips into humor. So when you say it's the death of comedy, do you really believe that it is the death of comedy, or do you
it's a figure of speech, Maureen, and I'm just hoping that the pendulum comes back to the middle somewhere. Yeah, there are apologies that have to be made. There are reparations that have to be made. And those things have to be acknowledged and rectified. Okay, but to sanitize everything, I think is wrong. And that little boy, the 10-year-old boy, that's the only way you can feel his pain.
Yes.
And the heart goes out to that 10-year-old boy, but you're putting it in the context of what that time was. And there is a benefit. If I want to put a positive spin on it, I could say, look how far we've come. Okay. So, and I don't mean to sugarcoat it by doing that. And that is not to be dismissive
No,
Okay?
no.
Look, I'm a Jew, and the Jews have been kicked out of every country in the world. There was a Holocaust. There's anti-Semitism that's going on today. And you want to know something? Humor is a coping mechanism. There's a survival instinct that people have. There's a thing called gallows humor. You know, so there is a way, it's a mindset. Nobody's looking to piss anyone off. No one's looking to be divisive in any way. But geez, you know, what are we trying to do? We're holding up a mirror and we're saying, look who we were, look who we are. And there's a constructive mechanism in place there.
Also, too, you were talking in your book, Laugh Lines. Let me put up the picture. This is Alan's book that you get at Amazon, Laugh Lines, My Life Helping Funny People Be Funnier. You were talking about when you met your wife, Robin, who I think I would love because she just sounds so cool and great.
Yeah.
And you met her as a production assistant on SNL. But in the book, you were talking to her about how she's going to have to bear with you because you're going to write words down because they're going to fly into your head. And I think different people process their creativity if they have that in different ways. Some people see things in song, like Eric Clapton. Some people see things in painting or sculpture. I see things in words. I'll go out and walk or run and at words. So everybody has their way of dealing with life. And I love dark humor. I can go, like somebody said, hey, you know, Maureen, I say, you know, you're on the fence about having kids when you have a miscarriage, and your response is, whoa, that was close. That's my way. And I go, really, it was 5. And somebody goes, really, do you know why you had so many? I go, yeah, every time Keeping Up with the Kardashians gets renewed, my kid kills itself. Very dark, very dark. But that's me taking the pain of all that and flipping it. So do I not have a right to my creativity because somebody out there, it's how they take it in, not how I intend it. And I think that's a problem.
I think that there's a lot of people out there, an awful lot of people who have not had a bowel movement bigger or softer than a nickel, okay? And my suggestion is take a deep breath, take a swig of a laxative, and calm the fuck down.
Yeah, I know. I know. And the thing, too, you can't even experiment now in the clubs because to find what you want to say, sometimes you got to go over the cliff and go, that wasn't me. That was a little too raunchy. I didn't want to use that language. You got to polish it. How the hell can you do that if you're not allowed to go outside the lines?
Absolutely. And how do you hone it? It's like movies. You know, it used to be you do a movie and then you screen it in some remote theater out in Babylon or somewhere in the bowels of Jersey. Okay. And then what's the audience reaction? What are the cards? What's the focus group say? And you tweak it, and you re-edit. You know, they like this, they didn't like that. What if we did this? We can reshoot and whatever. What's happened is because of the immediacy, like in your case, like or anybody who's in a club, yeah, I understand that if an audience recoils because you say something, and it's oftentimes the thing we say is not what we want. It's not right, but it's on its way to being the thing we want to say.
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly.
So the process has been somewhat perverted, if you will. Okay. It's, I remember George Carlin. Okay. I want to say this was in the 1990s. This is in the days when HBO had their comedy festival in Aspen every year.
Yeah.
And I had something there that year, a play that I had written was being staged there. And we went to what was called the Wheeler Opera House. And George was there. And George hosted the first SNL ever. George was there and on stage, and places packed, as you can imagine. And he had a stool next to him. And on the stool were pages from a legal pad. And he was either honing the act for a special or an album he was going to do, one of those two things. So he would do a bit. If it worked, he put a check next. He let us in on the process.
I love that. Don't you love that?
If it didn't work, he put a big X in it, and he says, all right, you won't see that again. Okay. And you felt like you were a part of it. You felt that there was a collaboration, that we were helping the guy. And you know that George Carlin was not exactly a middle of the road kind of comedian. Okay. Okay. So I wonder if you get a guy like that today, how many people would he piss off?
Right.
Okay? You know, and it's usually the things that you don't include, which are where you just said steps over the line a little bit. Okay. All right. Back. Okay. Make this a little easier so people don't head for the exit. But I think we have to be our own. Look, it used to be that we would be our own barometers. It would be like, what feels comfortable coming out of my mouth? I see the audience's reaction. Is it valid? Yeah, maybe I should soften a little bit or say it this way. I see the audience reaction. No, I think I'm right. Another audience will like this. But some of those steps have been taken out of the process. That's all I'm saying.
How do you get there? That's the whole thing too. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing George Carlin a couple of times, and that man, like yourself, gracious in the moment. His ego wasn't off the chart. He was right there, and he was interested in you too. You're like that, and that's why I'm so grateful you're here today, Alan. Truly.
I'm happy to be.
Well, I wouldn't be comfortable with somebody who isn't real, and I love the idea. And his daughter Kelly is so real. I mean, they're just wonderful people.
Kelly's the greatest. Kelly's the greatest. Yes. So
real. And I just remember sitting with him and talking with him about his process too. But when people are saying to me, oh God, Maureen, my one person show is just, you know, it's just in its early stages, or it's just I'm working out new stuff, as if they don't want you to come. I'm like, that's exactly when I want to go. I love watching it, the sausage being made.
Yeah, sure.
It's an honor to see the vulnerability of it, I think.
Mike Birbiglia, you're familiar with Mike?
Yes, Mike.
Okay, so we're friends, and I have seen some of his shows 4 times, 5 times, not once they've opened, the process along the way. Oh, that used to be here. Oh, that's new. Oh, he got rid of the thing. Okay, and there is so you're there to be entertained, but as somebody who does what we do, you marvel at the process.
Yeah, I do.
Okay? And I've seen John Mulaney a number of times. I just go, wow, whoa, how did he do that? How did he describe Trump as a president in the White House without using Trump's name?
Yeah.
He just uses allegory of having a horse inside of a hospital. And every time he said horse and every time he said hospital, it got funnier and funnier because it became Trump more and more and more, but he never said the name. So I get off on, maybe this is the writer in me, and what was your first draft? What came before this? Okay, this is the apple. It's the polished apple. What was it before you smoothed off that little spot over there? What was that, you know? I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. I do find that fascinating. I just today with people coming to your shows, anyone's, you plural, with their video cameras, or I want to throw it against a wall. I want to be rich enough to have to go to jail and pay bond from friggin' breaking everybody's fucking phone, because it's inhibiting. You know, and it's just insane, because I had a woman come up to me. You can't even use the language that my father would use from the South Bronx. You can't say like the language Huey Langan would use as a garbage man from the South Bronx. You can, and I described him as being a mix of Fred Sanford, Archie Bunker, and Marlon Brando, the early years, not the fat years. I had a woman corner me, because my dad was very handsome as a young man, but he's got the Archie Bunker, you know, our math class. Again, you want to be inappropriate? I will go there. I wouldn't. I'm just saying Huey would say this. If he had to teach us homeschooled right now with the math, he'd be teaching us how to Jew him down, just like don't jip him off. This is what our math class would be. Don't jip him. I mean, it's insane. But those are the kind of things a guy from the 30s would, you know, I don't say that, and I mean no disrespect. Those of you out there who are flipping the frig out, of course I don't. But if I put that language into his mouth, and I got to deal with some woman coming up to me after going, I swear to God, she goes, I don't like that you use the word fat. I go, what? I just poured my heart and soul on the stage. What? She goes, well, I used to have eating issues. I go, well, who didn't? And then she's like, Well, my therapist said I should confront things that trigger me. And I go, you're picking me? You've been puking on your own for 40 years. All of a sudden, it's my fault. When did this become my freaking fault? You know, like, well, this is the whole truth. I don't think you're hearing me. I go, no, I'm hearing you. And I'm just going to go like, la, la, la. Like, I don't want to hear you.
Well, see, that's the problem. The head is getting in the way. Okay. Now, we've all had issues. Now, if that woman was fully evolved, she would laugh. Yeah, she's not going to forget that she had eating issues. Maybe she was overweight, okay? But if she was fully evolved, she'd laugh. And that to me would be, oh, you're cured. You got past it. Good for you.
I should have told her to get a better therapist, Alan. I should have said, get a better friggin' therapist because there's something wrong with you. Hey, we got a question. Mark Pitta, he's a comedian, and he ran the comedy night at the Throckmorton in Mill Valley, California for many years. And he called me 2 days ago and said, please ask Alan. I just finished his book. This is how eager he was to get a question in with you. He said there's a part in your book where you make a joke to Paul Simon, and I'd like you to tell that. And he asked, has any ever backfired on you trying to ingratiate yourself to a celebrity before, you know, just trying to connect? You're a young guy. You're trying to do your thing.
The Paul Simon thing was, he was the biggest idol I've ever had. Growing up on Long Island, Simon and Garfunkel they were kings, okay? And so when we first started SNL and I met him, I was just in awe. Just in awe of him. I couldn't believe that I met Paul Simon, and we became very friendly. And as a matter of fact, on one of my David Letterman appearances, I read from a previous book of mine where I plagiarized the words to The Boxer as for a poetry writing class in college, which I did. And then the teacher wanted me to come up and read my poem to the class, and they all started singing along eventually. I couldn't believe that I met him, and I was I was nervous. He made me feel comfortable, and I tested the waters with him. I guess when we all left the restaurant, we were standing on a street corner in Manhattan waiting for the light to change. And I just looked over and I said to Paul, who's like somewhat vertically challenged, I said, Paul, you don't know it yet, but it's raining. Now, have any backfired? I'm sure there have. Boy, I wasn't expecting, so I'm just computing, you know. What I did do all along the way was I've had a pretty good gauge as to, do I know this person well enough to say this, or should I wait a week? Okay.
Wait a week.
So I would have to think about, and I'm sure there have been some misfires, but it was always along the lines of, do I know them well enough to make this joke? Okay, because I already assumed they had the sense of humor. Oh, I once asked, Robin, that's my wife, and I once had dinner over Barbra Streisand's house. This is many years
ago.
In LA.
Holy moly.
She wanted me to rewrite a movie she was doing. I ended up not doing it. But we had dinner over a house. There maybe were 10, 12 people around this dinner table. I was sitting next to her. So I was sitting between her and Robin. And we were talking. We were getting to know each other, you know. She gave us a tour of her house, which was amazing. And then we went to the Geffen Theater in LA to see one of Steve Martin's early plays. I drove Barbra Streisand there. Robin sat in the back seat. Barbra Streisand was sitting in the passenger seat. We're talking. Now we go into the Geffen Theater, and like I said, I'm sitting between, just like at dinner, I'm sitting between Robin and Barbra Streisand, and we're talking. And now all of a sudden, the lights in the theater come down. The play is ready to begin. There's a lull. I don't know, maybe somebody behind the curtain wasn't in, one of the actors wasn't on their mark or something. There was a little bit of a lull. I look at Barbra Streisand and I go, "You're a singer, right?" Okay. And she looked at me like either she was talking to an idiot or she was scared that she suddenly in that half a second lost her popularity. And I knew right away that, well, we're not going to, I'm not, if you can't fool around and have fun about yourself, I don't know if this is going to work, you know?
Did you find her to be humorless? I mean, obviously in that moment, but did you get a sense that she had a wit or a humor, or,
wow,
or she took herself too seriously?
I don't know if that was it. I didn't know her, get to know her well enough, but let's just say we were on different planes when it came to what made us laugh.
You know, I always find like when you rib somebody or like I'll take the piss out of them or jab them, to me, it's a sense of endearment. It means I feel comfortable enough around you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a litmus test. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, I'm going to say this joke. I'm going to do this thing. Do you like it? If you don't like it, maybe I did it too soon in our relationship. If you'll never like it, I don't know if we could be friends.
Well, that is a litmus test. There's a couple things I want to talk about, projects that you're on. But before I do that, I want to talk about you and I mean, both been at the Friars Club. We know people who have been very established and maybe their careers aren't at the height that they once were. And, you know, even you're welcome, Mark Pitta. He says, thank you to you, Alan Zweibel, for answering his question about Paul. We love you, Mark. Well, I do. I don't know if he'll love you, but he'll meet you one day.
No, I love him already. I need.
He should be famous. He's one of the best hosts I've ever seen on the planet. Like,
oh, great.
Oh, hysterical. So anyway, the thing is, look, we all age, and I'm at an age too, post-period, pre-death, and we all get to a point in our life where our value is shifted. And the thing is, what you write about in the book, and I agree with this, you can only write your truth where you are. You can't, if I could turn back time, we can't freaking turn back time. And we have bared witness to people with a bitterness around us who are established. Talk about a bit about that.
Well, that's a great area to get into, because when even at an early age, when I was writing for those Catskill guys, there were a couple of them who, there was one night at the Friars Club, early 70s, where in those days, Engelbert Humperdinck, there's that name again, and Tom Jones would tour. And I think their visas allowed them to tour for like 180 days before they had to go back to wherever they, you know, England or whatever. And they had an audition where the comics at the Friars Club would get up and do 10, 15 minutes. And the guys who would book Engelbert Humperdinck, their managers was a man named Lloyd Greenfield. I don't know if you ever remember that name. And if somebody came off the stage, they go, okay, we can give you 2 weeks with Tom Jones in Tahoe. They would book the tour, okay? And I remember a couple of comics in particular who were playing the Catskills who refused to do that, who said, I've given enough to show business where I shouldn't have to audition. And even as a kid, I'm going, where's the problem here? You're not a household name. If there's an opportunity,
take it,
you grab it. So the bitterness that I saw that a lot of people had, and even movie stars, former TV stars, listen, it must be really hard to have been a household name or a very famous person on a poster or above the title, and now you're not. As a writer, what I've discovered, and this is nothing profound, an audience can detect a fraud. So the movie that I just did with Billy Crystal, I could not have written, nor could he have written 5 years ago, certainly 7 years ago, because it wasn't in our life experience. And I had told an anecdote on the Letterman show. Billy called me up the next day and said, let's do that as an opening scene and let's see where it takes us. And all I'm saying is that we wrote it. My dad saw it. It's really funny. It stars he and Tiffany Haddish. It's called Here Today. And Billy plays an aging comedy writer who's having the onset of dementia. And he's writing a book about his deceased wife. He's having trouble, and he wants to finish the book before he loses his words altogether. He meets Tiffany Haddish. They develop a friendship. She becomes a muse, okay? And it's until my father started experiencing dementia, getting it, Billy had an aunt, the same thing. I don't think we could have written from within. There's no jokes about dementia in it. It's handled very, very respectfully. And as a matter of fact, will make you cry. And the jokes that are in there are character jokes. It's not jokes about the affliction. There's not one, oh, I forgot the such and such joke. We do that. And having not experienced it and felt it, I don't think either of us were equipped to write from within until it hit home. So all I'm saying is that I think that, you know, Neil Simon, and you sort of alluded to it earlier when I met Robin, he had once written a piece for the arts and leisure section of the Sunday Times. I guess it was I guess a play of his was going to open that week. And he said that the comedy writer he described as a two-headed monster. Okay, one head goes through the world, goes to the ATM, gets stuck in traffic, goes to the dentist, and then all of a sudden, without pronouncement or any sort of provocation, another head emerges and sort of is a little bit above this head and makes fun of the life that this head is living and writes it down, okay? And the fact of the matter is, and you admit, I made Robin read that before we got engaged. Yeah, she worked at SNL and she saw what the process was like. But I said, this is who you're going to be married to. We'll be in a car and I'll say, oh, write down Arafat's underwear. I'll know what it means, but write down Arafat's underwear. So the fact is, you know, and if you embrace where you are and you write from that spot, I think it's genuine. I think it comes from a place that you're not pandering. And once again, you're writing from within, looking at that way. So, you know.
There's a respect that you have as a writer that I see through you, that I saw through Gary Shandling by being inspired by Burns and Allen, who came before you. Very interesting to read that section, and that's part of the book, Laugh Lines, that people should wrap your mind around, because people don't seem to understand the trajectory. And I had spoken to a comedian. She came before me. You would know her. I don't want to say on air because she's lovely. And she said, you know, the comics who've come behind me have forgotten me. And she didn't say it in bitterness. She just said, I wish they would see, you know, hey, you want to be in this show with me, or I'm making a movie. And I thought, oh, wow, because I would just think it was a no-brainer. I would just think she was like, I'm getting, you know, fielding offers left and right. So I wouldn't have thought if I had a movie, oh, let me get her. I would think she's so famous and busy. It's just interesting to see.
I think that no matter what level of success you have, there's a certain amount of insecurity. I do think that there's a degree of, as you get older, and maybe I would think, as you would, that there are always roles for older people. Somebody's got to play the mother. Somebody's got to play the old postmaster. You know, somebody's got to do that. You know, and I think if the actor or actress ages gracefully and makes an acknowledgement of what their age is, that's very important, as opposed to those Catskill guys with the orange hair. All right. You're fooling nobody. But the fact is, I have the same reverence that you do for what came before us. I look at Second City, and I look at Mike Nichols and Elaine May, and Just if you look at almost like a genealogical chart.
Good way of putting it. Yes,
you know,
excellent way.
We do this because they did that. What Gary Shandling and I did was he gave me a book that I have in my study called Say Goodnight, Gracie. And it's about the two of them. And yeah, he broke the fourth wall. He spoke to the camera. Gary and I broke it open. You know, we included the audience. We drove a little car from one set to the other. We made but the fact of the matter is, there was always homage paid. Okay. And I remember Alan King, when he was alive, he was a great storyteller. He used to tell me that about I said, tell me about vaudeville. Tell me about the guys who came. And he would say it with such joy, you know, such joy. I was once writing a script. He was a producer. He had a big deal at MGM. And I was writing a script. He had a pilot that his company was going to produce for MGM. And we were going over the script. And I said, well, what should this set for this scene be? And I described it. I used this much of the page, just describing, okay? Really, the molding, the light, the this and that. And he looked at me and he said, did you ever hear of Block and Sully? I said, no. He said, they were a vaudeville team, okay? He said, they'd stand on stage. They had a cardboard palm tree right behind them. And they'd go, here we are in sunny Spain. Okay. And he goes, okay, you're in Spain. Okay. So he would tell me to, you know, don't keep your sets to yourself. He said, they'll believe whatever you want to. And he would tell me these stories about Buck Henry used to do the same thing too. We lost my buddy Buck Henry, who wrote The Graduate and created Get Smart with Mel Brooks. He would tell me, do you remember the comedy writer Pat McCormick? Mm-hmm. Okay, Pat McCormick was a huge man. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was Carson's guy, and I never met him, but I wanted to learn about him. Tell me about him. And he said that Pat McCormick was the kind of guy, he'd be in a supermarket at the checkout, and he'd say to the cashier, is this enough toilet paper for all this food? Okay.
Oh my God.
And I'm going, more. I become very good friends with Norman Lear, because when I was doing the book tour for Laugh Lines, his son-in-law, John LaPook, who's the doctor on CBS Sunday Morning, he interviewed the two of us, okay? And the theme of the interview was failures, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, all the family, Maude, the Jeffersons, Norman read off a list of shows that he created that got yanked and in no time at all. And I did the same thing, and we were laughing about it. And so we become friends. So I'll ask him. Bill Persky lives in New York. He and Sam Denoff were a great writing team who created That Girl, wrote some of the more memorable Dick Van Dyke Show episodes. And he and I have had some things like you and I are doing online. And I just, tell me more. Tell me more. We come at Carl Reiner from a different way because he's 89. All right. And it's just, to me, Maureen, people have to leave a paper trail. And younger people have to appreciate it. It's like somebody playing for the Yankees and not knowing who Mickey Mantle was.
Oh, I know. I love baseball, and I know. Duffy Dyer, backup catcher to Jerry Goodman, you know.
Arizona State, and then he was on the Mets, 69 World Series thing.
Crane Pool, number 7, first base. Anyway, and I loved, I was very fascinated with the Negro League, and I used to interview some of the players back when I was at Bloomberg. Oh, my God.
Wow.
And people have to go to Cooperstown if you haven't been there, even if you don't like, just it's history, people, freaking history. But my father, God love Huey Langan from the South Bronx, my father's one of the funniest human beings on the planet. And I would sit down and we'd watch, you know, they were reruns for me, but Sid Caesar and Ed Sullivan. And he'd go to me, hey, that one got moxie. You got moxie. You got to have moxie. And I'm like, well, I'm Irish Catholic. What does this mean? I don't know what's happening. But like, you know, just a real reverence for it. So I grew up around that with him, you know, when the television worked, 6 kids and 8 people in one bathroom. But when it worked, we would watch it. No, you have to have a reverence for it. And I think people, I watched somebody do this. I wanted to rip their friggin' face off. We would go down to the duplex on Wednesdays. Shout out to Dana Friedman, who's still keeping the open mic alive. And that's where you work out your stuff. And there was a woman, not famous, but was really revered, brilliant mind, had a stroke. Still brilliant mind, just coming out of the left side of her mouth now. Okay. And I saw, she left after her set. I saw some young kid who's never been doing comedy for 3 minutes, talking about his dick and fuck every other word. And he starts ripping her apart and mocking her. And I thought, you piece of shit. You don't even know who she is. You don't know how smart she is. You don't know what she has to offer. You're just up there like grabbing your crotch like you're the big swinging thing. And it just made me so angry that he didn't have a respect.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's I think that's a character flaw. I think that no matter what you do, you know, it's trite to say, okay, you have to learn everything there is to learn about it. No. But I think when you and I were talking about process before, we are allowed to do certain things now because people before us invented it. People like Lenny Bruce got arrested for it. George Carlin got arrested for it. So how did this all come about? What is the lineage, okay? And how did we get to here? You know, and anybody who doesn't have that, I'm not saying you've got to be textbook aficionado about it.
Trip Wetzel writing a book about comedy, who, God love him, he's a friar who wrote all these books about comedy. Just a basic respect, even as a human being who came before you. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Who came before you? How did we get to this place? And I just don't, I never had any tolerance for anybody who thinks they invented whatever. You know what I mean?
But I like that you brought up, because it's really important. I just have a couple more questions. You've been so gracious with your time. One of the things that people have, you have to tank, you have to suck sometimes. Things have to not work in order for them to work. You have a successful career, but I would like to read just a little quote from Roger Ebert. Please stand by. Roger Ebert, his review in the book Laugh Lines by Alan Zweibel regarding your movie North. I'm sorry. I hated this movie, hated this movie, hated. I mean, and then goes on. And then you run into him, Roger Ebert, big movie reviewer, you guys. And you run into him after this hate. You're in a fetal position. You finally come out of it with the help of your wife and your daughter. But you happen to run into him in a restaurant.
I always wondered, because I gave him the power when that review came out. He was arguably the biggest and most influential movie critic at the time. He used the word hate 14 times. And I always wondered, I gave him the power to let it paralyze me. And then when I finally came out of that tailspin, always wondered what it would be like if I ran into him. And for one of my books, I was on book tour. I was in Chicago, where he lived. I think he wrote for this Chicago Tribune or Times. Okay. And I was on book tour, and I was in a restaurant with a couple of people, and over at that table over there, wearing this really big sweater that had all the autumn colors on it, like burnt orange and puke green and mustard shit yellow and all that stuff. And I see him, and he gets up and he starts walking, and I excuse myself from my table and I start following him. I have no idea what I'm going to do when I catch up to him. It's almost an out-of-body experience. I'm going, gee, I wonder what Alan's going to do to Roger Ebert. I followed him into the men's room. We're at the sink now. And, you know, across the other side of the vanity thing is the wall that has the mirror. So we're washing our hands, and I say into the mirror, Roger, and he's right next to me, and he looks up, and I see it doesn't register who I am. So I go, Alan Zweibel, and the blood drains from his face. And I said, you know, Roger, I just have to tell you that I hate that sweater you're wearing. And he took a look at me. I smiled, he smiled, we both laughed, and we shook hands, you know.
That's gracious. It's hard to be criticized, but that's the only way you can find out who you really are and authentically, is to let people have that opinion. But it's so hard, isn't it?
Well, especially the first few times out, because coming from TV, you're part of a team. Okay, so if they hate something, your name isn't attached to that sketch that they hated. Even when I did it, Scary Shanling show, if somebody didn't like an episode, yeah, I caught some, you know, I shared the shit with Gary. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here, a movie I wrote based on my book. Okay.
It's you.
So the criticism is squarely on me. Okay. So that was a big lesson, because it was embarrassing. You know, we lived in LA where everybody roots for everybody's failure anyway, you know, and our son would come home. The kids in school were taunting him.
Love this.
He said, Dad, is it okay if we change our last name to Sorkin? And I'm going, Jesus, you know. So we were getting sort of knocked around. But I've read that review myself on TV, on Letterman and some other shows. You just read, it's like, it's a lesson. It's a rite of passage where, okay, if you're going to accept an excessive amount of praise, and if they give you little statues and big applause for it, you've got to be, which is one extreme. You better be prepared, because like I said, Norman Lear, this long list of shows I never heard of.
This is amazing to hear. I did a set outside of California, in Marin County, and Mort Saul was in the audience. This was a couple of years ago. You know, God love him. I come off stage. He doesn't recognize me. He goes, that woman who was just on stage, she's not authentic. I don't believe her. But I feel like I only do what comes from my heart and soul, what's real to me. I go, her, the one that was just up there, I think she kind of believes it. I think, no, it's not truth. Like, yeah, I think it is Tara. No, I think, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're like, you know, he doesn't know he's talking to me. And you know that that's how he feels. And you're just like, all right.
Yeah, that's how he feels. But that, you know, if he's talking to you and doesn't recognize you as the person who was just doing that, I'd mark on a curve here. Okay.
Very good. Okay. Bunny. Okay. Your movie's coming out with Billy Crystal, who was your friend when you used to drive into the city from Long Island, the first from day one. Your new movie with him is called Here Today. Here Today. And when will that be? As my father calls it, in the movie.
We're waiting for, you know, it's all done. And we had the studio had a decision to make. Do you go straight to Hulu or Netflix? Or now that there's vaccines, do we wait for theaters to open up? We had seen the movie screened in a theater in Pasadena, a rough cut, before COVID. And it was so much fun to have 300 people laugh and cry at the same time. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed that maybe things will ease up a little bit. Can always go on to a streaming service, but this is the kind of movie that should be experienced within a community.
Oh, I can't wait to see it, because I love that pathos and heart and soul and smart and funny. And the others, I saw Bunny, Gilda Radner, a sort of love story back at the Lucille Lortel Theater.
Wow.
Kirby. And that's when I fell in love with you as a writer. Like, that's when you got on.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
And I love the little tree, anyway, tell me, are you doing a reboot of Bunny? You guys, it's fantastic. Are you bringing that back? Is that a rumor?
There are a couple of producers who want to bring it back to the New York stage, and there's a very big production company who's talking to me about making it into a movie. Let's see what happens. You know, there's something universal about the story, even if for younger people who don't know who Gilda was. You know, it's you know, having a platonic love affair that lasts 15 years with somebody, you know, and the quirkiness of it, and there's something that people like thematically about it. So hopefully we'll have another incarnation. It's always playing somewhere. It's always playing in some stage somewhere. But as far as New York is concerned, yeah, there's been more recently people said, hey, why don't we do that? Well, so I said, let's go for it. So we'll see what happens. And
if there's a book, it's just a beautiful love story between Alan and Gilda as friends, and it's incredible. So if you get a chance to see that, and I cannot let you go without giving those writers out there going, Alan, just give me oh, there it is. But oh, yes, there it is. Bunny, Gilda Radner, a sort of love story. Somebody's out there on their couch, and if you don't know Gilda, I'm going to punch you in the face, and you better find out now, or you're dead to me. The other thing is, you know, success sometimes is all, in addition to talent, is sometimes luck and timing. So the writers out there who, comedy writing, what's your advice to them? I'm sure it could take 8 years to tell.
Keep writing. Just keep writing. That's what makes you a better writer. Yeah, an opportunity will come along. Mm-hmm. If you persevere, you'll get an agent. If you persevere, that agent will get you an interview. If you persevere, you'll become friends with somebody who gets to star in their own show and asks you to come and write for the show. Opportunity will present itself. Okay, so be prepared when the opportunity comes. When I met with Lauren for the beginning of SNL, I took all the jokes those old guys wouldn't buy from me, and I typed up 1,100 of them, and I was prepared. I had an opportunity. I said, this is what I do. This is who I am. So be prepared. I don't believe that, especially now. Yeah, let's get beyond COVID. Yeah. There are enough clubs. There are enough YouTube. There's enough streaming things. There's enough. Somebody is going to be looking for somebody just like you, whoever you are. Just be prepared when they say, "Can I see who you are?" to give them a binder.
Oh, I thought you meant me. Okay. I can't believe you had I can't. That was hurtful. It was like, come close, go away. But Alan's book, I want people to know, please get this book, because it's so wonderful about working with Gary Shandling and SNL and writing, and his wonderful wife, Robin, who I think is just incredible. Laugh Lines, My Life, Helping Funny People Be Funnier, with Alan Zweibel on his website, Alan Zweibel, or at Amazon. You, mister, have spent more time with me than any other guest. I am so grateful.
Maureen, I love talking to you anytime.
All right, my darling. Thank you. Wait, ding, 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 ding. And if you guys missed any of this, go to Patreon, Maureen Langan. You can see the whole thing there once I put it up there. All the best to your grandchildren.
Thank you.
And you know what? You have a love in your heart that just pops through your book. Honest to God, it just comes through, and you can't fake that. So thank you, Alan Zweibel.
Thank you. I'm glad we're friends, Maureen. Take care.
Oh, me too. Thank you, Alan. All right, you guys, there you have it. You are lucky ducks that you got to see this incredible interview today. Honest to God, I'm so honored, because you know what? That man is so friggin' down to earth and talented, and we got to have him here with us tonight. Okay, so I'll see you around like a donut. Bye, wig. Mwah.